Right, good evening. Happy Friday to everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, that song always holds a special place in my heart because it defines a time in my life where things weren't always okay. Things weren't always going well. But over time, things got better. And that's why I like that song so much because Epiph hold on a second. That's the second Amber Alert for today here in Texas. So, like I was saying, that song has some definitive attachment to me because of how far, you know, I've came with the epiphany of having to have a different life. And tonight I want to talk about some topics that aren't really that popular, but it still needs to be talked on. One of them is the missing people. How ironic! I just got an Amber Alert. Um, and the other one is some malpractice going on within the job that this educator was given and how she abused her power. You know, the first one is in the Northwest. Um, and I can tell you there's three people that they highlight, and I've never even really heard of these cases, but nonetheless, I think they're important enough to be talked on. Um, so here we go.
Reporting for King News Service.
From the truest mysteries of our time.
And so the second day after it occurred, this still remains the most mysterious skyjacking in the Northwest.
D.B. Cooper, who hijacked a 727 jet plane out of Portland, Oregon on Thanksgiving Eve, 1971.
To the notorious crimes of the Northwest.
But something was new, the name Ted.
They premeditated design or intent to effect the death of said Lisa Lee.
My chance to talk to the press.
Contrary.
And the cases that have gone cold.
3 men burst into the business. Their motive was robbery, but it soon turned into murder.
Unsolved Northwest is digging through the King 5 archives to help uncover the truth.
The name of the robbery suspect has not been released.
And up to now, we hadn't heard about any arrests.
No.
Many unsolved cases are solvable. Maybe you know the very tip that could help crack the case.
First one is I mean, because it just tells you how quickly life is changed.
270,000. That's about how many unsolved homicides there are in our country, according to experts.
Tonight, on a special edition of Unsolved Northwest, we share stories of 3 of them. Mysteries from right here in Washington State. I'm Steve Solis.
I'm Madison Wade. Despite some technology advancements in DNA and testing, many of these cases still need answers. Answers you may have that might help crack the case.
We start in Tacoma, where Tika Lewis vanished from a bowling alley 25 years ago. With few witnesses and no physical evidence, her case remains unsolved.
Every year, Tika's mother holds a news conference and a vigil to mark the date of her disappearance, even a quarter century later.
This is for you, baby girl. Mama will never give up in finding you. Just give me my daughter back. That's all I want.
2-year-old Tika Lewis vanished from the New Frontier Lanes bowling alley late last Saturday night.
Whoever did grab her up was probably watching this all night long.
Tacoma police now say they've logged nearly 700 tips.
I'll never give up hope on my daughter.
I know she's out there somewhere.
My name is Teresa Chapesky, and I am the mother of missing Tika Lewis. On January 23rd of 1999, I went to New Frontier Bowling Alley. The bowling alley was packed. I mean, there was a whole bunch of families. There was kids running around. I went to go bowl, and I had turned around and seen that Tika was in the game machine. Threw the ball, turned around, there was no Tika.
I mean, I remember when we were younger, we used to be allowed to go into the game room, to the arcade, and we used to be able to go to the toy aisle and hang out. Me and my brother are 7 years apart, so I was a lot older than him. So I was kind of his protector, but during this time we had the Adam Walsh abducting in Florida. We were always told, don't talk to strangers, don't leave with strangers. But this little girl looked very young, and I don't know what she was doing there. And I'm not judging this mother whatsoever, but she just looked really young to be over there by herself. And I mean, it was a different time then. I get it. She might have not been far away, but for a split second, that's all it takes, and that's all it took.
Immediately, my heart stopped. They had people going over there searching. The family was stuck, not knowing anything.
Detectives have been working through leads all week.
The minutes go by, the hours go by, and there's no news.
As the time passes, there's much more concern as far as what's happened with her.
Back then, there were no cameras. There were no videos of this incident. There was no physical evidence to look at and test to actually find out what happened.
Can you talk about what 25 years does to a case like this?
People forget. People's memories get replaced with what they think they remember. Time is not in our favor in this case.
I know it's been 25 years, and some people give up hope, but I can't, because I think my daughter's out there somewhere. But as the years go on and there's no trace of Tika, I don't know how I feel anymore.
It's a little girl. She deserves to live out her life, and a mom deserves to have her baby.
Deep down inside, my heart was ripped into pieces.
Tika's family returned to the spot where she was last seen.
This is where the bowling alley used to be, and now it's Home Depot.
What's behind you?
The rainbow. And I know it's my mom. She's watching over me today. She knows it's hard, and she's not here to help me through this day. So she's doing it another way. Mommy loves you, and I'll never give up hope in finding you.
I mean, can you imagine? PKC, you're the only one in the chat with me. Can you imagine being this mother, losing her child, and been searching for her for 25 years? No clues, because there was no cameras. There was no. Oh, it's not all. It's not all going to be about kids. It's going to be missing people, as well. This one's almost over. I can't imagine how this mother feels. I mean, I almost lost it right there. As she was talking to her daughter, I'll never give up. I'll never give up looking for you. And I know that probably everybody that watches this or, has ever watched a missing persons episode, if they lost a loved one, they'd never give up on searching for them. There's many people and that search for killers of their loved ones, these unsolved cases. They search for their missing people that just seem to vanish out of their lives. Here one moment, gone the next. And that is so tragic. That is so tragic. Yeah, I bet that's how that felt, PKC. I mean, you said you lost your daughter twice, about 30 minutes at home and 15 minutes at the county fair. You feel like you can't breathe. I mean, that has to be terrible, a terrible feeling. I mean, back when this happened, I don't know if y'all remember, but back then there was people going around snatching up young children and newborn babies. So that was the thing back then. And they would snatch them up and because they couldn't have kids or it was a high dollar thing, you could sell these children to these types of individuals that couldn't have children or wanted children that didn't want to wait on the adoption process or maybe that's the thing that's kind of messed up about adoption. If you're over a certain age, people don't want you. It's like you're too old. It's like, nah, I want the little babies. I want the small child. So there was a high demand for this. So I'm not saying that's what happened, but during that time, some of that was going on. It was going around. There was people snatching babies out of hospitals, stuff like that.
Hi, I have the 25 balloons.
So I just want to tell you we admire your strength and we want you to accept the balloons as a gift from Dollar Tree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This means a lot to me. Thank you so much. For them to give is amazing. Do I want to do this? No, I don't. But I have to for my daughter.
Tacoma Police.
Yeah, Teresa Chpesky for Tika Lewis.
I'll unlock the door for you if you want to walk in here.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this event. It's a somber event, the 25th anniversary of the disappearance of Tika Lewis. Tika is no longer a 2-year-old girl. She is a 27-year-old woman.
I didn't think I'd have to do this another year, along as 25 years. I don't want to go another holiday without Tika. I'm pleading to the public now. I know somebody out there knows what happened to Tika or knows where Tika's at. You can pass out those cancels. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to Tika's vigil. I will be releasing 25 balloons for each year that she's been gone. Don't let them go yet until you write on them.
I have a pen right here if you want to write a sentiment on there. What are you writing?
I said I love you, Tika, and I want to see you so bad. And people out there, if you have any information, please give it to us. We need to find her.
Oh my God.
She was the closest person that I had to me at that time, so she's always on my mind.
On the count of 3, you guys can release your balloons. 1, 2, 3. Let this be the last year. 25 years be the lucky year.
For decades, human feet have been washing ashore across Puget Sound and the Salish Sea up the coast to Canada. Since 2007, 20 human feet have been discovered. While investigators have closed a majority of those cases, one of those cases in Everett remains suspicious.
Investigators say a black Wright sneaker washed ashore sometime Friday near Pillar Point
The detached feet are found in shoes, but no other remains are ever close by.
There's been a dozen of them or so, and you hear about them over the years, and it's just kind of a unique local phenomenon.
Since last August, 5 human feet have washed up. 9 feet have washed ashore.
Then all of a sudden, you start questioning all kinds of things because there's somebody that's connected to that in a real way.
What's up?
Hey, Elizabeth.
Try not to cry or anything. I miss his laugh, his comfort, his voice, his I miss everything about Antonio.
Hi, Mom.
I'm Jenny, and Antonio is my son.
I'm her too. Not yet. You guys having fun?
So Antonio celebrated a year sober in 2016.
We got it so good here.
He ended up relapsing, unfortunately, around October. And he came across one of his friends, Andrew, and he said, yeah, come on with me. You can sleep on my couch for a while. And so we've always liked Andrew. And he had came over to our house to pick Antonio up. It was really cold out. Made sure he wore a couple pairs of socks and some boots. I hugged Antonio. That was it. That was the last time I saw him.
I'm trying to jog my memory here for a second, but isn't the Pacific Northwest where all those indigenous women have been going up missing? You know, and they were just saying that they have like 9 parts of feet washed up on the shore. I mean, that is just unheard of. You know, there's something connecting those feet to a body. You know, I would think that just by speculation, you know. But this case right here is kind of weird in the sense that Antonio was obviously, like she said, he was in recovery, then he relapsed, and then he started, you know, couch surfing. I don't know if any of you in the chat have ever done that, but you know, that usually happens when you can't go home. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you're enjoying this because it's tough topics, but you know, it's something that needs to be out there. We can't act like it doesn't happen. You know, there's a lot of people missing.
When we come back,
Antonio's friend Andrew is the last person to admittedly see Antonio alive. He knows a lot more than what he is telling people.
Well, he's been missing for 2 years, but tonight an Everett man is presumed dead.
I hugged Antonio. That was it. That was the last time I saw him. 3, 4 in the morning, I get a call from my friend Jessica saying Andrew was in an altercation with Antonio, and Antonio had ran away. Antonio's friend Andrew is the last person to admittedly see Antonio alive, and he knows a lot more than what he is telling people.
Is he a person of interest in this?
Yes, he is. He took a polygraph. He was told initially he passed. The person who reviewed that initial polygraph said another test should be done. Well, when they went back to do that, he declined. Frustrating.
Nobody wants to talk. Andrew's no longer cooperative after he was cleared.
He self-reported to his DOC officer and to others, including Jenny, that Antonio had stabbed him. So we have an altercation. It just doesn't make sense. There's more there.
There was no solid DNA and no witnesses that want to come forward.
Well, he's been missing for 2 years, but tonight an Everett man is presumed dead.
I knew he was dead. When I reported him missing after the 2 weeks, I knew something had happened to Antonio.
And then in January of 2019, somebody on the Jetty Island out in Everett here came across a boot and found a foot inside the boot.
I get a call from my detective, and he sent me a picture of a boot. I was insistent that that's his 2 pairs of socks. I know that I bought those socks. Those are his boots, and they must be brown because of the water. And I'm freaking out. I couldn't move, just hysterics, because I knew that was Antonio.
The Snohomish County coroner says a foot that washed ashore on New Year's Day on Jetty Island belongs to Antonio O'Neill.
That was tragic, but it's solidified. And the weird thing about where Jetty Island is the house Antonio went missing from is literally a 5-minute walk to that river. And then the mouth of the river is where the island is.
This is the 10th Street lawn.
Oh, wow. So a 5-minute walk to the river. The rivers flow. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be a little off there, but I'm pretty certain rivers flow, right? So if that river was flowing, it would have taken that water and whatever was in it and dumped it into that bay. And that's where they found his boot. This is the man that found his boot. Can you imagine stumbling upon a boot with a foot in it? Man, these people are brave.
Lunch, I think. We came down here on New Year's Day in 2019, I think it was 2019, 2020. Come out here recreating with the kids. We were running back and we thought, oh, we'll just hike along the Jetty Island a little bit before we end the day. Just beachcombing, just kicking around the beach.
An average person, probably would just walk right past that and not even look at it twice, but something drew them to it, and they went over there and found my son, what little we have left of him. But I want to meet the people who found it and just thank them.
So I want to meet her. If she wants to, if I can help her and she's looking for help, then I'm going to help.
We're heading to Jetty Island, the boat launch. Gonna meet Mark. He found my son's remains. I'm looking forward to meeting him so I can thank him. I'm extremely grateful. Nervous. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Jenny.
Holy cow. It's good to meet you. Oh, God. Seriously. I am extremely grateful. I have so many questions.
I got all the time in the world.
Oh my gosh. I'm just so grateful. If you would have never been so curious to just take a second look at that shoe boot, I would have never found any bit of Antonio because that's all I've found so far. And it's amazing.
This is retracing our steps all the way. The weather's even similar. It's warmer today, but it's a lot like this.
Do you remember where it is? Where it was you found him?
Yeah, about.
Is that another eagle?
Really? You want to check it?
Yeah, because I don't have my glasses.
That's why I carry those things too, actually.
Oh, it's a bald eagle?
2 bald eagles, yeah.
2 of them.
An adult and a juvenile. The adult's eating.
That's good.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's really cool. I just want to get justice for Antonio, and I'll do whatever it takes, and going and keep it in people's faces so nobody forgets, and he deserves it. My boy didn't deserve this. So, yeah. thank you, Mark, for all of this. Yeah, honestly, I can't thank you enough. Yeah, seriously, I can't thank you enough. It's crazy. It's so crazy. That's what I'm saying, man. If you just wouldn't have been there that day. So grateful.
A professional snowboarder, business owner, and father of a young daughter vanished after a fire at his Mount Vernon home. That was 20 years ago. As Sebastian Robertson reports, the case still stumps investigators and has left Josh Corbin's family wondering what happened to him.
You ask anybody about Josh Corbin and they'll think of a board, whether it's a skateboard or a snowboard. The mountain was his life. His life revolved around snowboarding season. When it wasn't snowboarding season, then you would catch him skateboarding. He was doing what he loved. He was his happiest then. He ate, breathed, did it. I am Crystal Ogle, and I'm Josh Corbin's sister.
My name is Jenny Corbin. I am the youngest sister to Josh Corbin. Since I can remember, started out skateboarding, and then the moment snowboards came around, he was up at the mountain.
Josh Corbin and his fiance were driving back from Mount Baker in the car they were riding in.
Let me ask the chat a question. You know, there's a lot of people that go missing as they get older in life. Like you hear of so many. We just heard of one of the female that boarded the flight to LAX and ended up in Mexico, and she's alive. Where her father, thought that something tragic had happened to her, and he took his own life. But we hear of adults going missing, and the police give the same story, there's nothing wrong with that. They are adults. You can go missing if you want. There's not a law against it. But, whenever somebody goes missing, that doesn't necessarily mean that the family is automatically okay with them being here today and gone tomorrow. And this story is quite interesting. And the next one that I'm going to show you, it just really, I was dumbfounded when I watched it. And it had to do with a missing person as well. It's not in this video, but as you're watching these, I want you to think as a criminologist would, what would have been the intent, who the suspect might have been, based on the information that they give you, because that'll help you later on if you're really into the true crime genre, that you have an understanding of how these cases work. And not saying that we can become amateur detectives or anything, but at least you'll understand, well, okay, well, this person was the last one seen with them, this one was the last one around them. What could have possibly went wrong? Let's look at this one. This one I want you to pay attention to, because this one and the last one, I don't know where your thoughts are on the last one. The Andrew guy was the last one that's seen Antonio. He took a polygraph, he passed it, was no longer viewed as a suspect. What do y'all think about that one? Give me your thoughts in the chat, please.
And got hit head on by a suspected drunk driver. Corbin was alive but injured. His fiance did not make it.
So from that point on, Josh entered a very dark phase.
Next on Unsolved Northwest.
A small fire had broken out in my brother's room. He was nowhere to be found.
Exactly.
So from
Jen.
that
Thank
point
you for
on,
being here.
Josh entered a very dark phase. He was in a lot of pain. He was very traumatized and didn't know how to do life without Katie.
My name is Josh.
That's when Josh started hanging out with a different crowd and started getting into serious drugs and became a serious drug addict. He was just spiraling out of control. His contracts that he had and sponsorships by skateboarding and snowboarding companies were what he used to help support himself. And when he didn't have that, he needed to rely on others. They opened the board shop. My mom was hoping, I think, that that would feed what he was looking for and give him something to look forward to. A small fire had broken out in my brother's room. He was nowhere to be found. The fire was rather small. They were able to put it out, but they had found evidence that he had climbed out of his window on the second story and jumped to safety. He was nowhere to be seen.
Mount Vernon police assigned an investigator to the case shortly after the fire. A spokesperson for the department says the case is still open, but say they've not had any new leads in a number of years.
Just brings back so many memories and what the potential he had and where he would be right now.
And so as the years pass, there's more and more that he's missing, and not knowing is super hard.
It's something that we've had to deal with for 20 years, not only for the fact that I no longer have my brother, but he had a 10-month-old daughter, and that 10-month-old blossomed into just a beautiful young lady.
If you have a tip about any of these stories, we'd like to hear from you. Text the word unsolved to 206-448-4545. We'll also keep you updated on all of our Unsolved Northwest stories.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Unsolved Northwest. To see all of the stories in our series, go to our streaming app, King 5 Plus.
All right, so that concludes that one. So the last one, there was a fire in his apartment. He supposedly jumped out the window and hasn't been seen or heard from since. That is just so wild to think of, that something like that could happen. Hey, Rondi. Yeah, Hannah was her name, and they found her, though apparently she did it all her own. Yeah, they found her in Mexico. Like all the stuff that was going around, they found her in Mexico after that big old fiasco. This one right here, there was a comment in this video, and there was a person that said they were close to the family or whatever, and they were close to this person. They grew up together, and I asked them to email me, but the creator of this channel deleted my comment. So I don't know if they saw it or not, but it'd be cool to have them on panel if they did see it, so that we could continue getting the word out. Well, here we go. Her name is Keisha Sylvester.
On Friday, the 22nd of September in 2017, a 29-year-old mother named Keisha Sylvester was last seen leaving her home in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, when she would mysteriously disappear into the night, never to be seen again. According to her family, she had been spending the evening preparing dinner before she abruptly decided to head out to give her daughter some money. But to everyone's surprise, she would fail to return home, even opting to leave her purse and cell phone behind, as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Just over a week later, an unconfirmed sighting of Keisha was recorded, where an eyewitness claimed to see a woman matching her description climbing into a white truck near her hometown, which would inevitably add yet another layer of mystery to her sudden disappearance. However, despite being given all the evidence they needed, the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office were unable to track her whereabouts, and as time passed, the details surrounding her case only grew even more troubling, as Keisha would fail to pick up her last paycheck and even missed her daughter's prom, an event which she had been excitedly planning for. But to make this already harrowing case even more disturbing, it was then revealed by the police that just days after Keisha vanished, her landlord had apparently removed all of her belongings from the trailer she lived in, meaning the authorities had no choice but to rule him out as a suspect due to the lack of remaining evidence. So, with the case eventually turning cold, over 7 years later, the young mother still remains a missing person to this day, understandably leading her family to wonder what really happened to Keisha Sylvester and who could be responsible.
So there you have it. She went missing after giving the person who she had the daughter with money for her prom. She left food cooking on the stove. She left her cell phone. She left her purse. But the person who was her landlord assumed that she had gone and left the trailer and came and bagged up all her stuff. They ruled him out as a potential suspect, but yet he tampered with the evidence. And the last that they had seen Keisha, she was supposedly getting into a white truck. And nobody's seen or heard from her since. This case it stinks. She didn't go get her last check. There was no activity on her debit card, no activity on cell phone, social media, or anything like that. I don't know, Rondi. It's weird to me as well. I've been through this town on my way to New Orleans, Breaux Bridge, little bitty town.
Keisha Dawn Sylvester was born on the 15th of November in 1987, where she grew up alongside her supportive family in the vibrant community of Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. Known for her warm and caring personality, Keisha was deeply connected to her family, especially her father Clovis and daughter Naya, and she was always described as reliable, loving, and full of life, a person who made sure to prioritize those she cared about. However, as well as this, Keisha also had a natural gift for cooking, which she eventually managed to turn into a career as a chef for the Silver Casino. And from her very first day, she worked diligently, showcasing her talent in the kitchen, whilst balancing her other important responsibilities as a mother. But although this dedication was strongly admired by everyone who knew her, it was no secret that Keisha also had her challenges that she preferred to keep to herself. But no matter what she was going through, she always made sure to put on a brave face for her family. And despite these shortcomings, Keisha remained optimistic and focused on the future. One of the key reasons for this was her daughter Naya, who she would see every week on the days she wasn't staying with her father, and towards the end of the year, she was heavily involved in Naya's preparation for prom, which was just days away. However, for reasons which are still unknown to this day, her plans would never come to fruition, and this bright future would inevitably be cut short as she would mysteriously disappear on that fateful day in 2017. On Monday the 18th of September, the 29-year-old woman was picked up from work by her brother Joshua, who would go on to drop her off at the trailer park where she lived alone. At the time, she appeared to be in high spirits as they discussed her plans for Naya's upcoming prom, but eventually Joshua would say his goodbyes before heading to work himself, leaving Keisha alone in the home. Little was known about how the next few days played out, but what we do know is that 4 days later she would travel over to Naya's house, which she shared with her father, to deliver some money in preparation for the big day. But during this exchange, it was revealed that Keisha had to get back home soon, as she was in the middle of cooking and needed to get back to her trailer. However, despite the urgency of the matter, for some strange reason, Keisha would fail to return home, leaving her food unattended and her person's cell phone in the trailer. It is unknown whether or not the stove was still on at the time, but given the lack of information around any potential fire in the property, it would be safe to assume that she was diligent enough to switch off the stove before leaving that day. But nonetheless, this would be the least of her family's worries.
So there you have it. She went and dropped off some money. She was on her way back to her trailer. Vanished. Vanished into thin air. I mean, how many times do we hear this? How many times do we hear, oh, they were just doing something they always do, or they were just taking care of some kind of business, and then boom, they vanish. It's terrible.
As Naya's prom would eventually arrive, only for the teenager to end up severely disappointed when her mother failed to show up.
Yes,
But keen to get to the bottom of this strange occurrence, Keisha's family then began to relentlessly call her, hoping to find out where she could be. But as the days passed, with no contact from Keisha, her family realized that the situation was potentially far more concerning than they had first thought. So with nowhere else to turn, they then decided to call the local police to officially report the 29-year-old mother as missing. On Monday, the 2nd of October, the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office would receive a call from a devastated family who were desperate to find out what had happened to their loved one. According to them, it was extremely out of character for Keisha to just suddenly up and leave, especially given her plans to see her daughter off for prom. So adamant that something troubling may have occurred, they begged the police for assistance in the matter. In response, the authorities agreed to open up a missing person case and immediately began speaking with her family and friends for potential information that may have led them to a clue. During one of these conversations, it was revealed that Keisha worked at a local casino as a chef, so keen to get to the bottom of this mystery as soon as possible, officers were then sent out to the Silver Casino to speak to her colleagues. However, they would soon be shocked to find out that Keisha had actually been let go from her place of work in the previous weeks. But to add further fuel to the fire, they were also told that she had failed to show up to collect her final paycheck, which understandably concerned the investigating officers, to say the least. So, as the troubling evidence began to stack up, the sheriff's office decided to broadcast the case to the public, hoping that somebody would come forward with further evidence or a potential sighting to confirm her safety. And it wouldn't be long before a tip would come in from a member of the public who claimed to have seen a woman matching Keisha's description climbing into the back of a white...
I didn't know that, Texas, but that's some interesting information. This was 7 years ago. So this was about 2017. But, you know, she gets into a white vehicle, and that's the last she's ever seen or heard. I know this isn't a white truck, but I think it's supposed to have been used to demonstrate that's what the truck looked like.
White pickup truck in a nearby neighborhood. However, despite these harrowing details, there is no confirmed evidence that law enforcement ever followed up on the white truck sighting with a thorough investigation. There is no public record indicating that authorities checked surveillance footage in the area where she was reportedly seen, nor is there any information about whether they interviewed witnesses extensively about this sighting. But to make matters even worse, there would still be one more twist in the case, which would turn any serious concern into a deep fear that something incredibly dark may have happened to Keisha. On Monday, the 28th of January, around 16 months after Keisha was reported missing, FBI agents decided to visit the property of a man named Randall Rodriguez, who was not only Keisha's ex-employer from her time at Silver Casino, but he was also her landlord. According to the police, a few days after terminating Keisha's employment, Randall then decided to head over to the trailer that he was renting out to her, and after noticing that she was not returning home, he assumed that Keisha had moved away, opting to leave her belongings behind. So, assuming that she would not be returning, he began removing items from the trailer and in doing so, tampering with any potential evidence that could have been left behind. So for this reason, the police viewed Randall as a key suspect that they were keeping their eye on throughout the investigation. But
I mean, how is that legal? You can be a landlord and in a couple days you can't get a hold of your tenant, so you assume that they leave the property and you go and you box up all their stuff? How is that legal and how does that not throw up red flags? You tell me, in what world does that not throw up red flags? And the police were just like, well, we're just gonna keep an eye on you. The dude tampered with evidence at that residence 2 days after. How did they not? Oh man. I swear, sometimes there are cases that do need to be ousting the police for their stuff, and I believe that this is one of them. It sounds like.
it wasn't until over a year later that they finally gained access to his home to conduct a thorough inspection. Randall went on to tell reporters that the investigators turned his home upside down, looking for any possible links to Keisha. They searched his septic tank, computers, and even took away some clothes for examination. According to Randall, it was a nuisance at the time, but he was relatively unbothered because at the end of the day, he wanted answers about her disappearance just like everyone else. But either way, eventually the authorities cleared him of any wrongdoing, and Keisha's family were moderately satisfied with this conclusion, although they did voice their harsh criticism around the delays involved in the search. After all, for all they knew, Randall could have been spending the previous 16 months cleaning up every shred of evidence that may have led the case back to him. So with little to no evidence remaining, the police were left scratching their heads as to what...
See, that's what I'm talking about. The last 16 months. 16 months. You're telling me that this guy couldn't have cleaned up the evidence of a murder or a disappearance or like the heading says, human trafficking. I mean, it just baffles me sometimes how, and it could be the reporting of this person who made the video. Maybe it didn't happen like this. Maybe he's sensationalizing it by his reporting. Who knows? But if they didn't do anything for 16 months, that gives this guy plenty of time to destroy, hide, or tarnish the investigation.
could have happened to Keisha, once again choosing to lean on the public for help. However, every tip would unfortunately lead to a dead end, meaning that over 7 years later, Keisha Sylvester continues to remain a missing person to this day. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. But despite these rather bleak circumstances, Keisha's family are determined to continue their search for answers, as they believe it will only be a matter of time before the truth is finally revealed. However, given that Keisha Sylvester has now been missing for over 7 years, alongside the incredibly concerning details that surround her case, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of her safe return...
No, the daughter was staying at her dad's house, her dad's trailer, which was down quite a ways from her mom's trailer. They were in the same trailer park, but she supposedly went missing as she was leaving her father's house, walking back to her own trailer. She lived alone. But she had left food cooking. You know what I mean? It wasn't on the stove wasn't on, but she was preparing food. Her cell phone, her purse, everything was there. So, I mean, how could somebody just say, okay, well, she voluntarily went missing when she was cooking dinner for herself? Just makes no sense, honestly.
Is only growing weaker as
And another thing, it said that she got in a white vehicle, right? A white truck. How many of you ladies in the chat are going to get in a vehicle with someone you don't know? Very good. That tells me that she either knew the person or was comfortable getting in their vehicle. Because otherwise, I don't know very many women that would get in a vehicle with a stranger. I mean, I know if you don't value a lot of things in life, you would, but I don't know very many women that would just jump in a truck with a stranger. Yeah, Texas, that it could be.
time passes. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories.
Very true, B&B. Yeah.
Now, just before we delve into the various theories surrounding Keisha's disappearance, I wanted to first acknowledge the pain and uncertainty her family have been going through over the past 7 years. Out of respect for them, it's so important that we approach these theories with empathy and sensitivity, as I'm sure this situation still causes them a great deal of pain. So, as always, the possibilities I'm about to discuss are purely based on statements made by Keisha's family as well as law enforcement. But regardless of how you feel towards these theories, the fact is they remain nothing more than speculation, at least until some concrete evidence emerges to confirm a definitive scenario. But with that being said, one of the theories that has been strongly considered by both parties is that Keisha may have been met with foul play. After all, her family have been adamant from the start that her sudden disappearance doesn't make sense given her close ties to her loved ones, especially her daughter. They firmly believe she would never leave voluntarily without a word, particularly given her important responsibilities.
And that's another thing that I believe that people don't really understand. Women will not leave their children unattended. That motherly instinct is usually there, deep rooted. A woman is not just going to go off and leave their children unless they're, you know, in a drug addict mentality. They're not good for their kids and they've been missing in and out of their lives. That happens. But for an individual who had just lost their job and she had a good relationship with her family and this daughter, I don't believe that she would have just walked off and said, well, my daughter's fine. I gave her her prom money, so let me just go and disappear. What do y'all think about the theory of a mother just abandoning her child? Am I right on that aspect that they're just not going to walk out?
Like her daughter's homecoming event and an unclaimed paycheck waiting for her. These factors, combined with the reported sighting of her near a white truck on October 2nd, 2017, have raised serious questions around whether or not she could have been coerced, or worse, abducted. Adding to these suspicions, Keisha's purse and phone remained in her home, and there hasn't been any confirmed activity or communication from her since late September. Another troubling detail is the timing of her landlord removing her belongings from her home soon after her disappearance, as Keisha's family believe this might have destroyed crucial evidence that could have shed light on her fate, regardless of whether or not Randall was involved. But despite these unsettling details, there's been no concrete evidence released by authorities to definitively confirm foul play, and no official suspects have been named so far. This leaves Keisha's family and supporters with more questions than answers, as they continue to push for a more thorough investigation and appeal to the public for any information that might lead to a breakthrough. So despite the contentious evidence that is available, the question unfortunately remains: if foul play is indeed the cause, then who is responsible? And why has this case gone unresolved for so long? Well, some have speculated that Keisha may have been involved in a tragic accident, particularly given the rural and water-adjacent landscape surrounding Bro Bridge. In this scenario, it's possible that she or her vehicle ended up in a location where neither has been discovered, perhaps in a remote area or even submerged in water. What lends some weight to this theory is the total lack of communication or activity from Keisha after September 22nd in 2017. This abrupt silence could suggest she became incapacitated in some way while she was driving home, and therefore she was unable to reach out for help. The unconfirmed sighting of her near a white truck on October 2nd also raises questions. Could this have been her vehicle? And could she have been traveling somewhere when an accident occurred? But despite these considerations, this theory has significant gaps as well, as no physical evidence has been recovered to support it thus far, and search efforts, though limited, haven't turned up any signs of her car or personal belongings in the surrounding areas. But if this was an accident, why wasn't a more urgent investigation launched earlier, especially after her family raised the alarms? Well, until more evidence emerges, this theory only remains a possibility. But
I
like
don't
much
know
of
what that
Keisha's
theory.
case, it leaves us with more questions than answers. So with this in mind, could there be something deeper at play here?
I don't go with that theory.
Now, although the following theory has been firmly rejected by Keisha's family, authorities have not ruled out the idea that she may have chosen to leave her life behind willingly. This suggestion often arises in cases where there is little evidence of a struggle or forced departure, and for
It might
Keisha, her home showed no clear signs of foul play, which some interpret as a potential indicator that her leaving could have been planned. After all, she was recently let go of her job at the Silver Casino and even dropped off some money for her daughter, almost as if she was purposely severing her ties to the community before disappearing and starting fresh elsewhere. But despite these ideas, her family strongly disputes this notion, as Keisha was deeply devoted to her young daughter and had no history of disappearing or neglecting her responsibilities. According to her loved ones, she had.
I mean, that never makes sense to me whenever people even suggest that. Well, maybe they just ran off. Maybe they wanted to disappear. I understand that unless you're in a psychotic episode in your brain, or maybe something has happened to you that you become having thoughts of offing yourself, um, having suicidal ideations or something like that. Or if you have a history of that, then it would be alarming to think that this individual would have left. They would have just ran off and left their daughter, left their house, left their cell phone, left their purse. That's another thing that's a telltale sign. At least this is what I've heard. Hey, Sirius, thank you for being here. What I've heard is women never leave the house without their purse. Never. Very seldom do they ever leave the house without a purse, without some kind of um, way to carry money or cards or whatever. Very seldom. At least with their identification. And I know darn well women and men and kids hardly ever go anywhere without their cell phone. So she wasn't planning on being gone long at all. She left these things in her trailer, possibly just saying, well, oh, I got to go drop off this money. My question is, did she have a large sum of money on her? And was she robbed? Because she gave her daughter that money, but did she have a large sum and somebody saw her or knew about the money? And was she robbed on the way back? Or was she abducted, like some of you have said? You know, um, those are just thoughts. Let me know what you think so far.
Strong family bonds and showed no signs of personal or financial issues that may have driven her to walk away from her life. It's also worth noting that there's currently no solid evidence supporting this theory. While a voluntary departure can't be completely ruled out, it seems inconsistent with everything we know about Keisha's character and her circumstances at the time. Ultimately, though, I cannot deny that this theory does raise some significant doubts. Is it possible that Keisha could have chosen to leave? Or is this just a way to explain the unexplainable? Well, for her family, the answer is crystal clear, leaving this theory as one of the least likely in their eyes. But if she didn't leave on her own accord, then what else could be responsible for her strange and sudden disappearance? Now, just before I get into this last theory, I feel it must be said that Keisha's family have once again strongly suggested that they do not believe there is any truth to this idea. But nonetheless, I still feel it is important to mention, given that Keisha's case is now over 7 years old, and in that time, new theories have since come to light based on the ever-increasing danger looming in today's society. Keisha's aunt would later be recorded as saying, "They're getting runaround stories like she's involved in human trafficking, or she was sold to somebody in California. But I know if she was in a situation like that, she would have found a way to contact somebody." Given Keisha's age, appearance, and location, which was near some major transit routes, some have suggested that she may have been targeted by traffickers. After all, human trafficking is a prevalent issue in states like Louisiana, where access to highways, ports, and secluded rural areas can facilitate these criminal operations. Also, if Keisha was coerced or abducted, it might explain why there's no evidence of voluntary departure. Supporting this theory is the fact that Keisha was reportedly last seen near a white truck. Now, while it's unclear whether she was driving or just a passenger, this sighting could indicate that she was being transported or coerced at the time. Traffickers often use vehicles like trucks to move individuals discreetly, and the lack of digital or physical traces after her disappearance aligns with tactics used to isolate and control their victims. However, this theory, like the others, lacks any concrete evidence, and law enforcement hasn't publicly pursued this angle aggressively, nor have there been any verified sightings of Keisha in a trafficking scenario. So, in my personal opinion, which I can only base on the information of
I've also heard that young children and small children are the ones who are usually trafficked. That older individuals are not trafficked. If they're doing so, it's usually voluntary. And I don't know. Yeah, Texas. That's what I was just about to say. Is I would think she'd be too old to traffic. I mean, you don't see that happening very often. I mean, you would think, the young child or the teenage boy or the teenage girl would be perfect age for trafficking. But this just doesn't sound like it's a trafficking situation.
available online, is that the theory of foul play appears to be the most probable, with Keisha's close family ties, particularly her devotion to her daughter, making voluntary disappearance highly unlikely, and the suspicious timing of her landlord clearing out her home certainly raises questions that remain unanswered. While accidental death and human trafficking are plausible, the lack of evidence supporting these theories means they remain secondary considerations. Plus, the absence of any significant investigation or publicized leads points to a troubling lack of resolution, understandably leaving Keisha's family and the rest of the Brobridge community in a constant state of fear, as they are only left to wonder, what really happened to Keisha Sylvester?
I mean, it's just sad to think that, as we've seen, here one moment, gone the next. And I think that I've been doing too much research or talking about the evil in the world because I've started to have nightmares on certain things, and I usually don't have those things going on. Um, so that's telling me that I need to slow down or I need to stop doing as many as I'm doing because I've been at a feverish pace for a while and I've usually done one or two videos a day. So that's pretty much telling me I need to slow down. So um, I'm going to continue with this next one, but I need to change the course a little bit because, as I've told you guys before, I suffer from PTSD from my childhood, and even though I'm not a child anymore, far from it, those remnants of certain things that I report on, they reenact in my brain as if they're true. So I've been pushing myself pretty hard lately, and with school, with work, with situations that are going on at work, reporting on some of this stuff. I really need to pull it back a little bit and kind of chill and check 12 gauge a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I've been pushing really hard and I have a lot of things that pull at me. So, I need to just find an outlet like I suggest to each and every one of you. This last one hit home because not only am I a therapist, I also work with juveniles. So this juvenile counselor was going above and beyond with her client, which I just never understand this. Just never understand this. But here we go.
A 28-year-old Illinois woman is accused of sending nude pics to a teenager. And even worse, she was working as a juvenile court counselor at the time of the incident. Bailey Hoyt is now facing felony charges as police say she sent explicit photos to a 17-year-old boy who was in custody. The details of this case could shock you, but let's start at the beginning. It dates back to 2019 when Hoyt started working as a juvenile counselor at the Robert Depke Juvenile Complex Center in Vernon Hills, Illinois. The facility works to help rehabilitate troubled teens. Now, authorities say Hoyt met the 17-year-old boy, the survivor in this case, while he was in custody at this center. He was later released, and after that, that's when the two started communicating outside of the facility. But what started as friendly messages quickly turned into something much more disturbing. Hoyt apparently engaged in lewd text messages with the teen and sent him naked photos of herself.
Okay. I don't know if you know the laws in your state regarding this, of you being a professional, especially if you have a licensure through the state, you're not allowed to have any kind of interaction like this with any of your people until 2 years after they were last your client. So I don't know how being 28 and being sexually attracted to a 17-year-old happened, but obviously it happens, Um, you're right, Sirius, you're right. And I have some outlets. I just have been neglecting them because, I've just been so caught up in everything that's going on. But I'll get there. Thank you. Thank you for that. Rondi says, wow, I cannot see why that would happen. We had this happen at my hall as well with some female officers. How does that happen, B&B? How do you get grown women being attracted and targeting young males? Did they get free world cases? Because I think that they can get charged with free world cases because they're essentially doing the same thing because the child or the adult doesn't have a choice. They have to take it, so to speak, because they're in a controlled environment. Let's continue on. This is just wild to me.
Investigators even say Hoyt encouraged the boy to delete these messages and photos to avoid getting caught. In January of 2023, Hoyt resigned from her job before law enforcement learned of this inappropriate behavior. But it didn't take long for police to connect the dots. The Lake County Sheriff's Office launched an investigation and soon discovered the full extent of what allegedly happened. According to court records, Hoyt was charged with official misconduct, that's a Class 3 felony, as well as distributing harmful material to a minor, that's a Class 4 felony. Authorities issued a warrant for her arrest, and she was taken into custody while she was working at her new job, which is even more shocking. According to her LinkedIn, she had just started working as a paraprofessional at North Shore School District, just days before her arrest. Now, a spokesperson confirmed Hoyt was immediately placed on leave and is no longer allowed on school property. Yet another disturbing case on the docket today. We're breaking it down now with criminal defense.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys in the chat. There is a presumption of innocence, of course. But based on all the information and evidence you just heard about this individual, does she deserve to be in jail? Or does she deserve to be free out being a perpetrator in the community targeting young children? Because there's statistics that if a male is sexually assaulted before the age of 26, that it messes their psyche up where they're traumatized. It might not seem that way. They might seem like, they want to be part of that scenario, but it's not normal. It's not normal. B&B says they were let go. Both males were almost 18, and the former officer started visiting them in jail once they got rolled up on the big boy charges. Rondi said yes, in jail. Texas says lock her butt up. Aquarius says jail. Okay, so she's not innocent in your eyes, is she? Are we gonna advocate, oh, let her go. Let her go. No, we're not. Yeah, she deserved to be in jail. I get males in the system act much like adults when almost 18, but they're still minors. Exactly. They're still not capable of making rational decisions until the age of 26 when the brain fully develops. I mean, they can function in society, but there's no excuse why this 28-year-old woman would be preying on a 17-year-old child.
Defense attorney and former prosecutor Kathleen Bogen-Schutz. Kathleen, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, right from the start, this is the question that goes through my mind all the time with these cases. We have an adult who's sending these explicit photos. So there is evidence. We have the photos. Why send these photos that are going to be incriminating?
Why does anybody do anything? It is ridiculous, the kinds of idiocy that some people get up to. Frankly, when I was a prosecutor and I would see somebody do something literally this stupid, I would oftentimes say to a jury, you're right, this person isn't smart. We don't catch the smart ones. I mean, because it just defies all explanation to create that kind of a paper trail. And you have to imagine that there's, the thrill of getting caught, the thrill of knowing that it's improper. That kind of heightens it more than it would for a normal romantic relationship.
You're right. I think the fact that they were communicating.
Did you hear what that ex-prosecutor said? She said, yes, she's not smart. We catch the dumb ones, like as smart as the criminal thinks that they are, they're always getting caught. And you got to ask yourself, when you're advocating for people that are so smart and so brilliant and so this, so that, but they still get caught. And there's a reason for that. Because they're not brilliant. They're not smart. They always mess up. And that's how people get caught. Whether you believe it or not, that's how it happens.
And it's not allowed. Maybe that was a reason that she wanted to participate or do it. Something that also stood out to me too about all of this is she was messaging the 17-year-old and encouraged him to actually delete the pics. Get rid of him, get rid of our conversation. That to me is consciousness of guilt. What do you make of it?
It's consciousness of guilt, and I try not to make it, part of what I do daily to help people get away with crimes or to help them commit them better. But nothing's really deleted on a cell phone. There's usually a way to get your hands on it again. And I don't know how many times you have to tell the general public that it's not going to go away. But we do see this quite a bit. For example, in my area in Tallahassee, we have FCI, which is a women's federal facility. And I cannot tell you how many times we have seen the guards with the inmates. But what makes this unusual here is that first of all, it's a counselor, right? But the second thing is that it's in a juvenile detention facility. So that's I think what kind of piques the interest here.
Let's talk about that because we've had you on our show before. We've talked to many other people about these similar crimes where an adult woman is sexually assaulting a child, but oftentimes it's a teacher. It's not someone I've yet to see, a counselor at a juvenile detention center, basically what we call juvie. That really stands out to me. How do you think that relationship would have started? Would there have been grooming at the juvenile detention center?
I don't know. I know how ours are run in Florida. I know this is an Illinois case, so I can't speak to how Illinois runs their juvenile detention facilities. It's going to be state specific. But usually what happens is juveniles are not shackled. If they're detained in Florida, they're only detained for a short period before trial. And occasionally they can be sent to facilities that are like leveled up programs for longer term periods of time. And it wasn't clear to me as to whether this was a temporary detention pre being adjudicated delinquent, or if this was maybe a treatment facility, because they will have counselors in both of those places.
I mean, I transported a juvenile today, hours ago, because he was playing with guns, shackled with leg irons, the belt with the handcuffs, all the good stuff. And I was thinking to myself, would it be more prevalent male guards on male boys? But these days you can't even go that way because of so many individuals. A perpetrator, a predator is going to be a predator regardless of their taste in their victim, you know what I mean? So if you're going to go after minors, you're going to go after a minor. It doesn't really matter whether it's a boy or a girl, and you're a male or a female. So, I mean, it's just a sick world we live in. Where did the morals, values, and beliefs go? And what I'm saying is not popular. There's a lot of people that go against what I say. They're just like, you're just too old fashioned, or you just don't believe that, people can change. Come on, man. I believe people can change, but when they're actively committing a crime like this, how can you advocate for change when they don't even see it at this point? People that get arrested, even in some of these other cases, they're in jail for a long time before they go to court. They're not rehabilitated just because they're in county. They're not all of a sudden seeing the light and saying, oh, I shouldn't have done what I've done. I'm a good person because I was doing this, that, and the other. She was a therapist. She should have known better because we take 8 hours of ethics CEUs here in Texas for our licensure. I don't know what they do in Illinois, but we're constantly being told sexual harassment, ethics, being professionally representing your licensure, all these things. And to just throw all that education, all your credibility out the window, she resigned. True. But she had already messed with him, so that was a crime. And what made it even worse is she was going into the school system to teach adolescents. So is she a perpetrator? Is she a predator? If we look back in her history, are we going to see that somebody did that to her? So she was just perpetuating the cycle of violence? You just never know. But, if we're looking at theory, that's usually what happens. B&B says that's why you always call in the mileage 12 and hopefully never transporting alone. Pedophiles don't change. Well, I always go by myself, and unless it's late at night. I went by myself earlier. I wasn't really. I'm never in fear for my life or anything like that. But it can always turn bad. It really can. But hopefully things. I got the bulletproof glass in between me and the perpetrator. The doors are locked. They can't get out. So stuff like that. It's a police cruiser. I mean, it's an ex-police cruiser, so it has all the bells and whistles other than the lights on it. But back to what I was just saying is, how could this female just out of the blue start saying, well, you know what, I'm going to throw my career away. I've gone to school, I've gotten this education, I've gotten this job. I'm going to just throw it away. And that's some food for thought right there. I don't know what y'all think about this. This is a disturbing case.
The Department of Juvenile Justice in any state, when they take custody of a child, and of course 17 is still a child, they're responsible for health, medical, and schooling too. So a lot of times these kids that are in custody, they've got other.
We have cameras that we turn on. One's facing the front, one's facing the offender in the back seat. I record every moment that I'm with a juvenile. They're on camera. So I'm happy about that. No, we don't call in the mileage, but I do check in with my supervisor when I get there and when I'm leaving. Thank you for that.
Issues. So they're responsible for making sure a counselor can get in to see them. I don't know if in this state, counselor is maybe a similar to a probation officer, or if this is a true like PhD social worker type of counselor. Either way, it's clearly highly inappropriate and illegal.
Let's talk about that counselor side of things. I know you said we don't know exactly what type of counselor she was, because honestly, a lot of facts about this case have not been made public. I think maybe part of it is that we have a 17-year-old who is obviously under the age of 18. So let's just say, for instance, that she is the traditional type of counselor that we think of, a mental health counselor to some degree. Is that a major abuse of power? Because this young student, this child, would be coming to her and talking to her about very intimate things, and she's then creating a relationship with him outside. I mean, is that, again, an abuse of power?
Yeah, and in my state, we also have an additional, like a way to up this kind of a charge. So it's against the law because of his age, sure. But it's also against the law because this person is in a custodial status of the child. So we have familial custodial status. So somebody who is in charge of the child, a teacher, a coach, a tutor, sometimes even an aunt or an uncle, I hate to say it. But it does bring me back to the, one of the things that I learned when I was prosecuting sex crimes, and I did that pretty exclusively for about 8 years, or exclusively for 5 years, and then another 3 after that. What do you need? And I'll take your viewers down the rabbit hole. What do you need if you were the kind of person that wanted to commit this kind of an offense? You would need privacy and access. These are not the kind of crimes that occur on the 50-yard line during the Super Bowl. They occur in private, and they occur in places where they can be hidden, and you need access to the person that is the victim. So in this scenario with a counselor, let's assume it's an actual counselor, like social worker, clinical, you're not only going to have access because you're going into DJJ for this meeting, but you're going to have privacy because the child is still entitled to privacy in their communications with this counselor. So you have both of those right there if you were the kind of person who wanted to do this. So, I mean, it's almost, and as a parent, it horrifies me. But when you're thinking about maybe having a discussion with your kids about this, and I'll say this as a PSA.
And to be fair, the offenders aren't stupid either. What better way to get out of a situation or get your time lessened than to get into these intimate situations with a staff member? And of course, they're going to say, okay, all of a sudden now you're a victim. Let's look at shortening your time because somebody took advantage of you. Or let's look at getting you out of here because somebody took advantage of you. They're not dumb. They'll set a person up in a heartbeat. So it works both ways. I'm being kind of hard on this person, but I don't know the whole situation. But either way, it was wrong. It is wrong. And she shouldn't have allowed herself to put herself in that situation.
If anyone is trying to get you to keep a secret from mom or dad or to keep a secret, that's a red flag that you need to come to us directly. So it is the secrecy, it is the privacy. These things do not happen out in the open.
Hey, so I'm going to take a guess and say a lot of you who watch our videos might be business owners, maybe even starting some sort of side hustle. That's why I have to talk to you about our awesome sponsor, Odoo. It's a free all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of apps, all that help. If you have other people who are there, it seems that these predators wouldn't commit these acts, And I wanted to talk to you specifically because you have that history, as you mentioned, as a sex crimes prosecutor. Her charges after all of this are official misconduct and distributing harmful material. Do you think that those are appropriate charges?
It's really going to depend on what comes out of this. A lot of times when someone is a victim of one of these offenses, particularly male victims, in my experience, what happened comes out piecemeal. That, if you're a male and you are a victim of this underage, that that you should like it, or you think it's cool or a big deal. And maybe in 10 years, you're going to look back on it and realize exactly what happened. But it tends to come out piecemeal, and boys tend to not be as forthcoming as girls when these things happen. So it is entirely possible that there was what we call hands-on crime in this, as opposed to just the texting and the pictures. Hands-on being that there was some sort of physical victimization as opposed to the texting, and that we may not find out about it until later. And the other possibility is that there wasn't, but there was some kind of solicitation. So when they dump these cell phones, like, for example, this is my iPhone, I forget what year, but it's relatively recent. It has about a terabyte of storage. It takes this is a computer in your pocket. If you try to delete things from it, there's usually ways to get it back. There's pictures, there's latitude and longitude data on it, there's dates and times, and you can pull those out of the pictures. So I get the feeling there's going to be a full forensic on every single device that this woman had in her home, as well as every single device that the child had. And sometimes that does take some time.
You brought up something so important, and I wanted to highlight it too. It's kind of a through line through a lot of these stories that we cover, in that there's this stereotype that young boys, if they're having these intimate relations with their teachers, they should be excited. They're the chosen one, they're lucky. And I'm really happy that you brought it up. Boys can be victims. Men can be victims. And so sometimes it makes it more tough for them to come forward. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is serious no matter the gender. But kind of going off all of that, let's say this is taken to a jury trial. This boy would be the key witness. How would that testimony look like if he doesn't necessarily want to be super cooperative?
And then you also have something in this case that you have in some inmate cases. And for example, I tried a federal case where an employee of the Federal Corrections Institute was having relations with inmates. The mere fact of them being inmates, and the mere fact of him being in the detention center, you've got that built-in credibility buster right there. That, like, oh, this is a juvenile delinquent. Oh, he's been in trouble before. Usually if kids are being held in the detention center, there's some kind of a history, or it's a more serious charge. There's like a presumption for the kids to go home. And I'm obviously glossing over quite a bit here. I'm just telling you how it works in my state. So you probably do have either a serious charge or a fairly, decent history of a couple of different arrests with this child that you can look back on and say, I put that up in front of the jury and say, you want to trust this kid, or you want to trust my client with the PhD or the social work degree? So, it's built in to not believe somebody with that kind of a history. That being said, the electronic trail is pretty damning. And it's entirely possible that they decide, even if there was some kind of hands-on offense here, that maybe we just go with the electronic trail because, I've got this victim and he's not particularly, he's not as lily white as I would prefer to have him. But, and again, go back to things that I would say to juries in closing. People lie. Phones don't lie. Computers don't lie. Dates don't lie. times don't lie. People lie. And you bring it back to that. And maybe you just go on those offenses with the transmission of
I like her thought process.
the
What do y'all think about
statements
that
and the
prosecutor?
pictures to go after them and make it a real clean case right there.
You're right. I mean, that's how we opened this interview, talking about how there's literal evidence. We have the messages and the photos. We have it right there. And again, you brought up going through her phone history, likely his too. There's a treasure trove of information that could be there, which leads into the next question I have. I mean, if she pleads not guilty, it could go to jury trial, but it seems like the prosecution may have a pretty strong case with these images. Do you think this would be more of a jury trial situation or maybe striking a plea deal?
Well, a lot of times, and I do criminal defense now, and having specialized in sex crimes for so long as a prosecutor, I do tend to get quite a few sex crimes cases. A lot of times when the state makes you an offer as the defense attorney on a sex crimes case, the real question is, do you want my guy or girl, do you want them designated? Do you want them to be a sex offender for the rest of their lives? Do you want their picture on the internet with the scarlet letter on them? And a lot of times it really doesn't matter what else goes along with that, whether it's just probation and no incarcerated sentence. But a lot of times we will try cases over that point alone because it's a pretty onerous thing to be designated as a sex offender. So while I might think, yeah, we've got quite a bit of evidence here. Number one, I don't know if these charges would designate you in Illinois. But number two, let me point out that even if there is this sweetheart plea deal, a lot of times we try these cases over just the designation, just the, the scarlet letter of A or the scarlet S for sex offender.
A lot happening in this case that we're definitely going to want to follow, see where it goes, and a really tricky topic to talk about too. So Kathleen, thank you for coming on and shedding some light on it for us.
Thanks for having me and happy holidays, everybody.
For now, Hoyt remains behind bars in the Lake County Jail. And according to court filings, she's due back in court on December 18th for a status hearing. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Is there anybody still in here? That was an interesting case right there. That lady, that prosecutor, she reminds me of a lot of women that I've worked with throughout the year. She's straightforward, she's blunt, she's to the point. I can respect that in a person than to be wishy-washy, you know what I mean? And it's like, I respect that. I respect that from people. And I respect that from the chat. If you guys are blunt and to the point, I respect your thoughts and opinions. And I think we have a good chat where there aren't a lot of nonsense that goes on in there. And that's because you guys are very polite and you're very knowledgeable of what goes on and what is not to be tolerated. Once again, and I've been saying this for a long time, I'm not stealing it from anybody. Without you, there is no me. There is no channel. There is no 12 gauge. There is no presentations. There is none of that. I've been saying that for a long time, almost as long as I've had my channel. I'm very thankful to people that come in here and spend time with me because I know that you have busy lives. I know that you have a lot of things going on, or maybe you don't. But regardless, you choose to come into this channel and you choose to be, chatting, chopping it up with the people that you feel comfortable with in the chat. A lot of you are mods and, you have that responsibility, which you do well. I know these cases aren't easy to listen to. If you watch this on replay, I know it's not easy to listen to this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, this is real life. This is real true crime. Because this stuff is what's really out there on the front line. It's not all the other stuff that people are presenting from their iPhones or from their chair at their home, after they get off work or whatever. This is real true crime that's happening. People go missing every day. People misuse the system every day. There's people being walked off these units every day for facilitating a romantic relationship with an inmate. And somebody has to do it. And there's a lot of people in these chats and in here that have either done it or currently doing it or taken interest in understanding the real things when it comes to the law and order of society, and that is to be held at a high regard. So thank you so much for being in here. I ask you one time, can you dig it? Can you dig it? If you can't dig it, get yourself a bigger shovel. Maestro, cue that music.